And good Friday to you, everybody. Welcome to another edition of SEC Football and Beyond. I am Chris Landry, along with my partner in crime, Neil McCready. It's a pretty busy weekend here as we flip the calendar to June. A lot of recruiting talk around college football, a lot of visits. A lot of that I know we're chalking out on LandryFootball.com. Neil, I'm sure as well. We'll talk a little bit. I know there's a lot of talk, a lot of questions I get about Arch Manning. We'll get into a little bit of that. That's going to be a story that's going to be every day. And the answers that you want, we can't give you because they can't give you. Big news in basketball with Coach K retiring. A little bit of an effect of, a lot of folks in Alabama are asking me, as if I know, Neil, that Nick has said, look, shh, don't tell anybody, but on, that's not how it works. News out of LSU, offensive line coach. Bunch of stuff we're going to kick around today. And as always, want to welcome your thoughts in the chat room. Neil, top of the morning to you, my friend.
Morning, Chris. Happy Friday. It's hard to believe that we're already into June and this portion of the season and of the year, I should say. It feels like 2020 went forever, and it feels like 2021 has flown by. We're like almost to the halfway point of a year. It's just 2021 is just, I don't know what it is, has flown by.
Well, you got one in college, one just graduated from high school, and it's just, time's getting faster and faster for you, my friends. I mean, the nest is not clear, but and they always come back to the nest, right? They may leave the nest, but they know the directions from the nest, but maybe that has something to do with it too. And maybe the fact that you're not, well, maybe you weren't, but the whole world is, I think the atmosphere is changing. The whole dynamic is changing. The positivity about, hey, we're back. I think it's just made it a lot of more interesting and fun.
I get to call the Hogs again on Monday. It'll be my second time to go to a Arkansas orientation. So they get you to call the Hogs. It'll be my second time to call the Hogs. Which
is she? I know from conversations on and off the air, she's an ardent follower, I'm sure, with her dad being so tied to sports, football. And I know, from the basketball race, she was, excited and thought, about, is she into baseball as much as that? Or no?
I mean, my girls are, to call my girls casual sports fans would be a reach.
But they take interest because you told me she went to watch parties and all that. But that's for the social thing, is what you're saying. They're not okay. Gotcha.
The key word there was the party.
Gotcha. Clear that up. Makes sense.
I think
nothing wrong with that.
I think you see, Campbell's been there for 2 years. I think she's been to maybe 3 or 4 games. She's been to a couple of basketball games, and then of course the pandemic affected a lot of that.
Sure.
But she's been a little bit, but no, I don't think she's been to a baseball game there. I don't know. It's a funny thing, right? When you're when you're a sports writer, all those years, I mean, weekends were work. And so when other people would take their kids to college games, I couldn't take my kids to college games. And, it's funny because Campbell, we moved here when Campbell was starting the second grade. And back in, I guess it was April, March, whenever Arkansas played baseball here, I think it was April, she went to the second game of the Arkansas Ole Miss baseball series here in Oxford. And it was her first game ever at Swayze Field. She's a girl that grew up 8-9 minutes away from the stadium. So, my kids are not, my girls are not big sports fans at all. Carson's a big pro sports fan. He loves pro sports, but he's not a college sports guy at all. He's never really, because again, there was no way for him to go to games. There was no one to take him to games. And so it's a different experience, I think, than what a lot of people think it would be.
This is the topic I wasn't going to get into, but I know you and Carson do some NBA talk and all. Real quick, the Lakers get knocked out last night.
Yep.
Well, the West looks kind of going to be a little new flavor to things, maybe even the East, too. It's going to be,
and there's a big,
I don't know what it's going to do for the TV ratings, but I kind of like it,
I don't think this is going to be a negative thing for ratings. If you keep up with the NBA, and I do a lot because I live with a 14-year-old who's obsessed with the league. There's one more game tonight in the first round. Potentially, Dallas can finish off the Clippers. For anybody who's not an NBA guy, Luka Doncic is this 22-year-old kid, the star for the Mavericks, who is amazing. And when he's on, he's spectacular. And what you've kind of seen in this first round in the NBA is a little bit of a changing of the guard. Trae Young and did it with flair. Trae Young put the Knicks out of their misery. The Atlanta Hawks guard, he's spectacular. You mentioned the Lakers last night. Devin Booker of the Suns grew up in Moss Point, Mississippi, went to Kentucky. Devin Booker just destroyed the Lakers last night. First half, they couldn't stop him. He was amazing. The game was over. The end of the Lakers title defense. I think the league's a lot of fun right now. The shame of it is Joel Embiid of the Sixers is right now got a meniscus issue that could very well end his season, and the Sixers are the 1 seed in the East. But there's a great series coming up starting tomorrow night, Brooklyn and Milwaukee. So you have Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and now Jrue Holiday with Milwaukee has made them a different team. So I don't know. It's funny. It's this mainstream media thing of, oh God, the Los Angeles teams are gone. The Knicks.
Yeah, I've had it with like LeBron and like I'm an old Boston Celtics fan, and so I'm being hypocritical because give me the Bird, McHale. I mean, I followed them and followed the league probably more than any other sport during that time. I loved it. We talked about that a few weeks ago.
Sure.
But I'm kind of now. I don't follow that, and even big news out of Boston this week with Brad Stevens bumping up, and a lot of people thought that he was going to be the heir apparent to Coach K at Duke. Anybody thought that anybody other than one of whatever Mike Krzyzewski is gonna point out and say, "Here's my guy," is kind of foolish. But anyway, there's a lot of thought of that. Now Brad is bumped up, Danny Ainge's retired. It's interesting, but I think I'm looking for, I kind of like some newness, maybe some teams that haven't had the chance. Look, I grew up, Golden State was kind of down. Golden State was, remember Rick Barry, and I remember in the late 70s, but that was a moribund franchise for a long time. The Clippers were just awful forever. The Jazz came close with Stockton Malone, and Denver, great ABA team, and I can remember when they would score like 150 a night, and it was not nearly enough to win. The T.R. Dunn and the Dan Issel group. But you know what? I can remember some great Milwaukee teams in the early 70s with
Sure.
Kareem. And then remember how good the Bucks were under Don Nelson when the Celtics and the Lakers were really good. And the Bucks always fell short because Marcus Johnson was good, who became a good friend. We did some work at Fox Radio, and boy, those teams were really good. And in a different time frame, I don't know how many, they go to 2-3 finals probably. They beat the Celtics one year, but they couldn't get by the Sixers. The Sixers couldn't beat the Celtics, and it was just, and I keep thinking Milwaukee is, that would be great for that city at that moment, and it would be good for any of these teams that hasn't had success for a while. And so, yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what's going to happen.
Well, I can tell you this Denver series coming up against Phoenix is going to be one hell of a series. And if we get, I picked Dallas to beat the Clippers, and they're a game away. And if we get a Utah-Dallas series, you'll get to see maybe the best offensive player in the league, and Doncic go up against this elite defensive team in Utah. And that Utah team's really good. Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert and a veteran point guard and Mike Conley, and they've got Joe Ingles, and they've got all these kind of pieces. It's a really good team. You speak of Duke, Quinn Snyder, a former Duke player, former Duke assistant, done a phenomenal job with the Jazz all season long. And they took down a kind of an up-and-coming Memphis team in the first round. And it's to me, and I know we're about to switch topics, it's just one of those things that the national media do this, oh, what's this going to mean for the ratings? Well, the ratings are already crap. So,
yeah, that's true, yeah.
Ratings have been bad for a while. If anything, this might get people to get past the whole LeBron storyline
Oh yeah,
and get to something different, because there are a lot of really good young players in the league. Nikola Jokic of the Nuggets is going to win the MVP, and no one's ever seen him play. And he's a fantastic player. I think this is going to put some different younger players on the big stage, and sometimes that's a good thing for a league. It maybe is an opportunity to hit the refresh button, to cleanse a little bit, and
I think it is,
because I don't mean this. This is not a political thing. I just think people are tired of LeBron.
Oh, boy, I mean, yeah, I am. I mean, we got to hear him on everything, and I mean, it's like, when are we going to change the logo from Jerry West to LeBron? I mean, my God, it's everything. It's like there's a topic on the NBA, they go to LeBron first, and the commissioner will be like somewhere third or fourth on the list. I mean, it's like, it's like it's just, I don't know, old school guy. We'll get off of it.
I'm excited people get to see some of the new faces.
Yeah.
Trae Young was a lot of fun the other night. He goes for all those points against the Knicks, and he hits that last three that's a dagger, and he goes to midcourt in New York City in Madison Square Garden and does a Broadway bow. And I mean, that's cool. And people go, I don't like that. Well, I'll tell you what, my 14-year-old kid thought it was awesome.
They love that.
He was like, did you see Trae Young? And I'm like, yeah, so this is how you build new fans. You show new people, young people. I love watching Luka Doncic play. I mean, when the Mavericks are on the TV, I turn them on, and I love watching Luka because he can just score from anywhere on the floor. And now you see Devin Booker doing it, and Jokic last night was terrific against Portland to finish them off, and Michael Porter Jr. And it's a great league. I think they've made a mistake in the league getting so hung up on the same two or three people. So
they've always done that, though.
It
was MJ, and MJ was the guy that took over from Magic and Bird, and it was Magic Bird, and it was Dr. J with Magic and Bird. Then they'd branch it out, and you'd see a little Karl Malone, but it's always been about focusing on that, and I think they tried to just do the same thing with LeBron. They just MJ'd him to death, and now it's, anyway, but that's interesting. A topic that is going to be a topic for a while, and until we just get him graduated from high school yet, because it's going to be a long period. And I admit I have not had a chance to listen or even read his article. I know Jeff Duncan very well.
Yeah.
He checks in every now and then on Saint stuff, and he does now a lot of stuff. I forget, he's made a move, I think, to TV station. I forget when
he's with the Athletic now.
The Athletic. I'm sorry, with the Athletic. Okay, who is not with the Athletic? Everybody is. And he's done. I don't know what he's covering, but it's obviously a lot of Saints, a lot of NFL, but he gets into a lot of different stuff. And I haven't had a chance. Full disclosure, not being lazy, just was out with some surgery yesterday. So yesterday I wasn't even sure who Archie Manning was. I wasn't even sure. I didn't recognize my brother. Anyway, so I'm back, and you had a really good interview, and I know Jeff Parrott says it was an awesome interview. I can't wait. I will listen sometime today and read the article. But I want to hear you talk a little bit about it, and certainly I'll give my thoughts on the overall look of the whole the whole Arch Manning situation, and kind of the recruitment, how it's likely going to go. Not going to tell you where he's going. I don't think Neil will either, because they can't. By the way, real quick before I forget, did you see? I did hear this, that NBC is the Mannings. There's a college, I guess it's a College Bowl quiz show that they used to have years back. It's coming back again. NBC's got a contract. The host of the show are Cooper and Peyton Manning, and the producer's Eli Manning.
Are you serious? I did not.
Yes. Look like I don't know what the name's going to be. I guess if you Google college quiz show Manning, something like that, it'll come up. And I think it's been in the works for a while. So I was wondering, say Cooper and Peyton, and Eli's the producer, and I said, doesn't that fit perfect? Because you got the two hams, which are Cooper and Peyton, and Eli probably had to cattle prod him just to be, he's probably just to do the behind. I ain't getting in front of the damn camera, Eli. So anyway, just so you will see the Manning. Maybe they'll break it. Maybe one of the questions will be, where is Arch Manning going to college? Maybe that's where it'll be broken on NBC. Anyway, I digress. You tell me about the fine article Jeff Duncan wrote and the conversation you had with him, and we'll talk a little Arch Manning.
Yeah, Jeff had a great article in the Athletic Tuesday, I think. I lose track of days. Early in the week, and it was incredibly well done. Obviously, Jeff is a institution kind of in and of himself in New Orleans. He's been down there forever as a columnist, as a beat writer, all that stuff. Everybody knows him, and obviously, you know this, being a Louisiana guy, New Orleans is a really big little town, and Jeff knows Cooper and Ellen Manning extremely well. Obviously, he knows Archie. He's done lots of stuff with Archie, and he knows Peyton, and he knows Eli, all that stuff. But Cooper and Ellen live down there, and he knows them and has known about Arch for a long time. And he was talking about how, you know, his bosses, I think when he was at the Times-Picayune, when he was there, you know, his bosses were like, hey, we need to do something on this young Manning, because obviously Arch was dominating kind of everything that he did there in the local scene, you know, with basketball or baseball or lacrosse or whatever it was that he played. And, you know, he would put him off. But he talked about how he told Cooper, I think, and maybe it was both of them, both of the parents, that, hey, look, you know, the day's going to come when I got to do my job. And I understand wanting to keep him out of the limelight for as long as you can, but I don't want to get beat. And there's going to come a point where we need to do this. And that point has arrived, obviously. And, you know, this month, Arch is, the dead period ended on Monday or Tuesday or whatever. So kids are taking visits now. They're all over the place. And Arch has a pretty extensive 3-week itinerary where he's visiting a ton of schools. And so he wrote about that and about this decision that's forthcoming. There was some breaking news in it that, you know, I had been told for a long time, Chris, that Arch would make a decision public about this time next year, you know, mid to late summer 2022. I think the plan now is to make this decision early spring 2022, make it public, because obviously he knows that a lot of other quarterbacks out there aren't going to make their decision until he makes his. And then he also wants to be a part of building a class at his new school whenever that comes around. And the best way to do that is being committed to Clemson or Texas or Ole Miss or Alabama or Georgia or whatever. I mean, you know, that's how you build you use your influence in that way. And so basically with that timeline, here we go, right? Because it's June. He's got visits in June. He's turning his attention back to his season in July, and then obviously the season starts in August, and then he's going to take some visits during the football season. He's going to go to as many games as he can. Obviously, they have the resources. They, being the Mannings, have the resources to, you know, leave his game on Friday night at Newman or wherever Newman is playing there in New Orleans and get to Clemson or Austin or Tuscaloosa or Athens or South Bend or Oxford or wherever they're going. And he wants to see as many of those programs as he can. And then when the season's over, he's going to get pretty serious and make a decision. And so we're in that recruiting cycle now. So it's a story here in Oxford that obviously, for obvious reasons, is huge. You talk about there's not a day that goes by that I don't get at least one question, whether it's an email or a text or a message board post or something with, hey, what's the latest on Arch? And often it's kind of frustrating to have to tell people there is no latest. You know,
That's right.
you sort of know the deal. And, you know, I think we now have a pretty decent idea what schools he's truly considering. I think that's pretty obvious. He's considering Clemson and Virginia and North Carolina and Ole Miss and Georgia and Alabama and Texas and SMU's on his list. I don't think he'll end up at SMU, but SMU's absolutely getting a visit. I might be leaving one or two out, but I think he's Notre Dame. He's going to visit Notre Dame. I think he's visiting a couple of the West Coast schools, Stanford. So there's some schools. I think we get a decent idea of the 10 schools ish that he's looking at. So I had Jeff on, and we just kind of talked about it, about who this kid is, what he's like. He's mature above his years, like you would expect a kid in his situation with his background to be. Kids like him. I know this. I've talked to some kids. I've talked to people that are close to some of his teammates there at Newman, and they all rave about him. He's got a couple of teammates that are a year ahead of him that are committed to LSU. Jeff talked about the LSU putting the full blitz on him. I think LSU was in better shape for Arch 18 months ago than it is today. Obviously, LSU today there's some question marks about that program. There's some question marks about how stable it is, how volatile it may be, what the future could be. This Title IX investigation obviously is a ticking time bomb that might or might not go off in Baton Rouge. But LSU's involved. I don't think he'll end up at LSU, but that's just my opinion. I think it's an opinion that Jeff shares. So we just kind of talked about, where this goes. And obviously with Ole Miss, and it's a new coach and Lane Kiffin, and the Kiffin and Peyton Manning. I think Peyton Manning was not thrilled back in whenever that was, 2008, 2009, when Lane Kiffin left after 1 year in Knoxville to go to USC. And it's not a secret, Chris, that I don't think the Manning family was exactly pushing for Lane Kiffin to get the Ole Miss job.
No, they were not. They were pushing in another direction, in fact.
That being said, I asked Jeff about it, and he said that he got the sense that was not an issue right now. So, Ole Miss is in an interesting spot because this is year 2 of Lane Kiffin. They've got a veteran quarterback who's an NFL prospect in Matt Corral. Obviously, there are a lot of family ties here. Cooper went to school here. Ellen went to school at Virginia, by the way. Arch's big sister, Cooper and Ellen's oldest, is starting her college career at Virginia in August. She's going to play volleyball there like her mother did. So we just kind of talked about all of that stuff, and how it's no one really knows what. If you talk to a lot of people, and I do, because there's never been a story, and I told you this, people don't understand what I mean when I say this, and I'll explain it. There's never been a story in my 13 years on this beat, including the NCAA stuff, that I've been more nervous about being wrong, because it's such a sensitive, emotional topic. I mean, you come on the Ole Miss campus and people talk about it like it's not true. It's absolutely true. The speed limit signs are 18 and 10. I mean, Archie Manning is an absolute legend at Ole Miss. Eli Manning is an absolute legend at Ole Miss. That name carries a gravitas here that no other name does. And if there is another name that does, forgive me for not knowing it off the top of my head. I mean, it's when you drive into Vaught Hemingway Stadium, you drive on Manning Way. When you go in to visit Ole Miss as an unofficial visitor or an official visitor, you go into the Manning Center. Everything is Manning. There's a lot of that name just has a tremendous amount of weight at Ole Miss. And so it's a very sensitive, interesting topic and all of that. And obviously for Lane Kiffin, if he could sign Arch Manning, I think it takes the rebuild of the Ole Miss program and puts it on an absolute fast track, because I think he would be able to recruit with Arch Manning here in a way that would be harder to recruit without Arch Manning here. Not impossible, but more, it would be easier to take your program into the next realm of programs if Arch Manning's on your roster. There's no question about that. So it's a topic of great interest, and I try to talk to people who are close to that family or close to the situation as often as I can, just to kind of get a feel for it, in large part, Chris, because I'm so nervous about being wrong, because I know that if I ever come out as saying, hey, I think Ole Miss is really in this, guys, I think Ole Miss is going to get Arch Manning, if I ever were to say that and then they didn't get him, I know how that works. The messenger gets shot.
Sure.
And then on the flip side of that, if I ever come across like I don't think Ole Miss has any chance, that I think Ole Miss is just an outsider, that they're only getting named because of the family connection, and then he signs with Ole Miss, well, I look like an idiot. And so I'm trying to just be as accurate as I can. And I get sometimes people going, how come you don't write about him more? And it's honestly because I'm a little timid of it.
What do you write? How good is he? Well, we know how good he is. Well, where is he gone? Don't know. Let's try that again tomorrow. Is he good? Is he good again? Yeah. Is he great? Is he more? It's like there is no nothing changes until it changes. You're not advancing the story. I think it's a credit to you, because there are going to be people that are going to be like, I think it's a great article by Jeff, and I think every now and then you get one of those. Let's bring perspectives in. I think you could maybe do that, but the whole where is he going to go? I mean, folks, sorry, we can't make something up that they haven't decided themselves. Yeah, I can look at things in a general sense and say, well, and I'll get that in a little bit. I want you to finish up is kind of how they typically have done things in the past and how things have changed a little bit since. Because I can remember now when Cooper was a freshman in high school, and Peyton, and I remember people asking me, well, what about these Manning kids? Are they any good? Because this was before they were any good, because I was just before I went into the NFL. So anyway, so
if you talk to enough people, the same two schools come up right now. It's always Clemson. It's always Texas. But if you talk to those people and you get deep enough into the conversation, they'll always tell you, but it's early still. There's still a whole season to play. He wants to see some things. Unlike a lot of kids, he has a level of access to information that not everybody has, right?
He's got more access than Peyton had.
Oh, absolutely.
And Cooper and Eli.
Not even close. And so he's going to be able to talk to a lot of different people at all of these programs. He's going to be able to talk to, the Manning Passing Academy is going to resume this year.
Yeah, I'll be there again.
He'll get a chance to talk to Matt Corral in a different setting. He'll get a chance to talk to the kid at Clemson whose name is DJ
Ungulale.
He'll get a chance to talk to kids.
Or DJI left LA. I'm just kidding.
He'll get a chance to talk to the quarterbacks at Notre Dame, at USC, at Stanford. He's going to he's going to know a lot, right? And there will be no lack of there will be no fooling him from on anybody's part. And so he'll get a chance to see. And a lot of people have said, hey, just be patient, wait and see what the fall looks like. You'll start to get a better idea after the fall. Here's the truth. You know this, Chris, because you've made a living in it. So have I. There are going to be coaching changes.
Oh, it's so many.
In America, there are going to be coaching changes after the college football season. There's a guarantee. I don't know who's going to leave or who's going where, but something will happen that will be off the radar, that will shake things up. It's who knows? Maybe a coordinator leaves at Clemson, or
absolutely.
Maybe Steve Sarkisian takes the world by fire at Texas. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe Ole Miss makes that big jump this year and has that magical season. There's going to be a day, I think it's in October, when LSU comes to Ole Miss. I haven't memorized the Ole Miss schedule yet, but I think it's October the 23rd. I think that sounds right. When LSU comes here, and they're retiring Eli Manning's jersey at Ole Miss. And it's my understanding that all of the Mannings will be here, and that includes Arch. And I'm sure that will be a really cool environment for him to see his uncle honored by Ole Miss. So, maybe that sparks something. I mean, that there's just so many unknowns. So people go, where is he going? Well, I don't know where he's going. Then when people say, where's he leaning? I think I can answer that with a degree of confidence that I think, if you were to say today, hey, bet on one school bet on one school. I'd say, okay, I'll bet on Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you told me, but the over-under's 50%, I mean, if you told me I can have Clemson or the field, I'll take the field. In other words, it's so wide open. I think Clemson's done a great job early. He really likes Steve Sarkisian. I think Virginia is a factor because of family ties. I think North Carolina is more of a factor than some people let on. I don't think they're in the top 4 or 5 or anything, but I think they're in it. I think there's a chance, and Jeff referenced this in the interview with me, there's a chance that he does something, quote, neutral, end quote, meaning he does something where people in Louisiana won't be pissed at him for not going to LSU, or people at Ole Miss won't be pissed at him for going to LSU or going to Alabama, that maybe he goes and kind of does his own thing at a non-SEC school. But it's too early to know. And he's going to have all the opportunity in the world. He's going to get an opportunity to see a lot of different things. And, it's like at the end of the day, and I've told people this, and you tell me whether you agree or disagree. I've seen this with my kids. At the end of the day, when you visit a school as a prospective student, as a prospective student athlete, most of the time when a kid's pretty open-minded about that, he or she gets a feel on a campus. And a lot of times that feeling takes over and becomes pretty real. I mean, I've used this example of my daughter before because she'd never been to any campuses and other than Ole Miss, and she didn't want to go to Ole Miss. She didn't want to go inside the state of Mississippi. She kind of wanted to go off to college. And so we went and looked at a bunch of schools. We stopped at Arkansas on the way to Oklahoma. We were going to go visit the University of Oklahoma. And within about an hour, I think she just kind of felt something and liked it. And, who knows, that might happen to him at Texas or at Ole Miss or at Georgia or, Notre Dame. I don't know. We'll see. I think he's going to give Alabama a long look because obviously Nick Saban has built a program there that what you get when you get into it. He's going to look at Georgia. There's some ties there that I think are worth noting. But the bottom line is that he's coveted by everybody. He's everybody considers him a generational talent, and it's a decision that's going to get a ton of headlines. And I think he's taking it seriously, and he's not pretending to not understand that. He's not pretending to do this. Oh, nobody cares. I can do it. He knows. He knows that a lot of people are watching, and I think you'll see them and he do it the right way.
Well, let's go back for people who may not remember the gory details. When Peyton was the first big one recruiting wise, Cooper was older, and Cooper went to Ole Miss, and Cooper wasn't nearly the player. He's a good player, and got cut short at Ole Miss. Would have been a really good, I think a quality SEC receiver. Not a great speed guy, but really good. Peyton is recruited very heavily, very hard. Now, he's got Archie. Archie is obviously well connected, and obviously the biggest thing there was the personality. And so Peyton was one of these kids we call the yellow legal pad, left column, right column, pros, cons, this and that. That was Peyton. That's Peyton's personality on everything. So Archie kind of made the connections. And then, obviously Peyton was able to, because a lot of people came at him, Archie kind of who you can trust, who you can talk to. And Peyton did a lot of the work. And that, in the end, was where Peyton wanted to go. And it was the main reason why. There's a lot of reasons why. Peyton was, and there were a lot of teams that they were quote unquote he was quote unquote considering, but it always had a feeling like it started with SEC schools with Peyton because he grew up following the SEC. The goal and the dream of like Cooper and Peyton were to play SEC ball, not NFL ball. That really wasn't something they were thinking of. And obviously, the whole story, Peyton used to listen to, old tapes of his dad play at Ole Miss. Well, it felt like it was going to be SEC, but then there were other possibilities, too, that came outside the SEC. In the end, what made it to Tennessee was Cutcliffe. He wanted to go that somebody who could teach him, and he felt like that Cut was the best of the guys that he came across that were He had stability there. Cutcliffe was almost like you had the head coach, and you had the guy that was as strong as the head coach in terms of popularity by the big boosters at Tennessee and the decision makers. And he just fell in love with Cutcliffe as a quarterback teacher. And that was the biggest difference in him going his way. Even Peyton, when he was trying to decide whether to come out a year early, the guy went visit Tim Duncan. He talked to everybody. He did his research. Eli wasn't. Eli, he listened a little bit more. He listened a little bit more. In other words, he talked to people, but he's not that type A personality that Peyton is. He's a different guy behind the scenes. He did his homework, and he kind of wanted to go there. And he was just kind of, you know what? That's good. Mom liked it there. And it was Cutcliffe was a big read. I don't know what Eli does if Cutcliffe's not the head coach at Ole Miss. I think that was a perfect fit. That the guy gets he's at Ole Miss. That's the guy that's a marriage, that's a friendship, that's like an uncle, like a brother that's coaching you, a father figure. And now he's at Ole Miss. And so people think he was going to Ole Miss because his mom. I think he was going to Ole Miss because mom and dad and Ole Miss, he knew Ole Miss, but then Cut was there. So I think it went there. So this is now a different situation. This is removed a little bit. Cooper's definitely an Ole Miss guy. I don't know the kid, Arch, enough. I don't know if you have a feel for it. Jump in here. I don't know the kid. I know the family. I don't know, and he's still young. I don't know what type of person. Is he more like when I described the two, Archie or I'm sure he's different than all of them. He's got his own personality, but he's more the type that's going to be like Peyton, that's going to look at all the little under every rock and do all this stuff, or is he going to be more of he'll listen, but is he a guy that's going to go and say, I feel this, I feel that, and that's going to have a lot to do with it, because he's going to, no shortage of information. You mentioned something too. This is a whole lot different. Everything is, recruiting clock is so sped up. We didn't have 3 years of, you did have 3 years of Peyton Manning talk, but it wasn't like it was in the coaching fraternity, not in the media every day. It's like, my God, is he the class of 2023? We're 2021. It's, next year at this time, he's probably already, as you mentioned, decided.
Yeah.
But, so the process starts early, the speculation starts early. You can go visit, you can do things. I am curious to see, because I don't know the kid's personality enough. In the end, he is not going to go somewhere where he's not comfortable, but he's going to be guided with more information, because he can ask questions that only Eli, Peyton can answer. And then, Archie may have some different connections. Cooper may have some person in his mom has got other connections that maybe outside of foot, that just personal, social. There'll be like a lot of good choices. Sure. And Archie's not going to Duke. Archie's not going to Duke because Cut's not going to be there that long. Cut's future's not there. But that was the biggest, and that's been removed a number of years now. But where does Peyton and Eli, when they were playing, go to with Cut? But the time, Cut's time is past.
Well, you said something really important just then. They're all good choices.
All good choices.
So
which his best was for him.
That's why I get back to the feel thing a little bit. You walk onto a campus, whichever one it is, and something feels different. And I think it's one of the reasons that look, I would have, God, if I had those kind of resources, I would have done this for my kids. Hey, let's go visit 20 schools. Let's take a look around. I remember taking Campbell on a visit to Louisiana Tech, and she said, within a few hours, I don't think this is what I want to do. And I said, that's great. That's why you take visits, so that you can get a feel one way or the other, and so, he'll look, he's at some point, something will click, because that's how this works. But everybody's going to put their best foot forward. I've always said this, it's so funny about recruiting, man. People talk about different things in recruiting. You bring some, kid from, like, I'll use me as an example. Had I been a football prospect, and God knows I was not, but from Ruston, Louisiana, where the biggest thing I'd ever really seen was Louisiana Tech. If you'd taken me to, Alabama and Georgia and Notre Dame and Tennessee and I don't know, pick a school, USC, and I'd gone on official visits or whatever to all those schools, every one of them would have wowed me. I mean, they all would have blown me away. And so, but they would have come down to having to choose which one kind of feels the best. And that's what will happen here. In the end, we turn these people into something that they're not. They're still humans.
That's exactly
He's
right.
still a kid. He's going to feel something, and one way or the other, someplace, and that's going to start leading him in a direction. It's like after Campbell had visited Arkansas, we went and visited Auburn one day, and it was a day. It was hotter than the surface of the sun that day on the Auburn campus, and I kind of thought going into it, I'm like, I think she's really going to like Auburn and all this stuff. And she got in the car and she just was like, it's not for me. And I realized at that point, I said, she's already made up her mind. I said, you know where you're going. She's like, yeah. And so that's going to happen with him too, because he's a human being. There's going to come a place in this process at some point where one school is going to stick out in his mind in a way that he's no longer open about other schools.
Well, and because the process is so early, it takes the every year coaching cycle that goes into the play, and you double that by 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, Virginia's in the mix because obviously, why is Virginia in the mix? Well, pretty obvious. His mom went there, his sister's there.
Sure.
Bronco Mendenhall's doing a really good job there. If something were to happen in the football program that would make it less enticing, probably would knock them down the peg, even though sister and mom, would be a good fit. Why is North Carolina in the mix? Well, you got to remember, Mac and Archie go back a long way. Mac was the head coach at Tulane. There's a relation. Is Mac going to be there, for the life of his, 4 years? Don't know. There's a lot of those things that could change. How well does Sark get off at Texas? How well is he? You think stability-wise, I think the reason why maybe people throw Clemson, well, why not? Elite program. It's a program that that looks like there's a lot of stability and probably not a changes. It's not like Dabo's going to have NFL people coming after him, and he's just there's stability, but
stability.
You bet the coordinator, you get the wrong coordinator that they don't miss. You better believe. Now, I'm not saying that somebody they'll come in as a new offense coordinator at Clemson, if there is one between now and then, that is not going to, they're going to be really, really nice. But it's not about being nice. It's about when they sit down and talk X and O's, and Eli and Peyton, and they're involved, that they might say, you know what, in terms of a quarterback coach, this guy over here is better. And why they go? Why is the whole Southern Miss thing? Well, head coach is somebody that they've known. That's actually been, because I've been around with them at the Manning passing. Good teacher. They like him. Is that enough for him to go there? No. But the way they think is go there, go to the camp. You can learn a lot that's going to help you, even though you probably don't go there. And it helps SMU to say, hey, they got a visit from Arch Manning. And, they can say, we finished in the top 3. Because in recruiting, if you're not number 1, you could be 2 or you could be 12, and you can claim to be 2, and no one can say any different. So it's things like that come into it.
Let me ask you this. Let's transition a little bit to some other topics. Got about 15, 20 minutes left. Mike Krzyzewski stepped down or announced that he's stepping down at the end of this coming season at Duke. And one of the big reasons was, of course, Krzyzewski's 75 years old. And recruits, and he's in basketball, you're recruiting 2-3 years out now. I mean, you're recruiting high school freshmen and sophomores. Recruits were asking, hey, coach, are you going to still be there when I get there? And he was having a harder time answering that question. Nick Saban's 70 years old on Halloween. That's going to start getting used against him in recruiting now that the first number in his age is a 7.
Mm-hmm.
How do you anticipate Saban addressing that question? From maybe recruits won't have the intestinal fortitude to ask it, but parents will. If someone says, hey, coach, are you going to be there for 4 years? When he's starting to being able to tell people, yeah, I'm still going to be the coach when I'm 74, 75, 76? How do you anticipate that being handled?
The way he's done it to this point has been very simple. Feel great, and he looks great. Energy's there. He hasn't slowed down a bit. No signs of it. The program hasn't been slowed down. I mean, recruiting, they're still recruiting the best. They're still developing the best. So, that doesn't answer your question of, are you going to be able to do that 5 years from now? Well, there's no one can answer that. No one can answer that. But it looks pretty good. You could look at Roy Williams and Mike Krzyzewski 2-3 years ago, and you thinking, how long are they going to be? I mean, they just looked older.
Sure.
And so, why are they retiring now? Well, you could just stop at, look, they're old and they've had enough. And I think you throw on the fact that maybe things are changing even more and more with the name, image, and likeness. That just says, you guys can have that. You know what I mean? So I think that's what's going on. I think with right now, what has been made Nick so different to this point. Now, it's going to change because at some point, there's going to be a year or a time where then he's not going to feel as good or something's going to happen. But we don't know when that is because it doesn't seem to be today. If you look at how he's approached the different rules and all that, hey, bring it on. We'll adjust to it. We'll be, he doesn't have any, he says, hey guys, you like football the way it is with all this up-tempo stuff and all that, and no time between snap. That's football going to be. He came out and said what he wanted. Then he immediately went and beat everybody at that game. So I think he'll continue to do that. Look, none of us has beat Father Time. So as he turns 70 in October, is he healthy? He's healthy right now. We don't know what tomorrow brings. We don't know what next year brings. So I think the answer is going to be, I am not slowing down. You can ask anybody. You can check anybody on the staff. This is still the earliest guy to get there late. He's got a plan in place. Once that begins to show signs of awareness. Duke hadn't been to a Final Four in a few years. I think they won it, in 15? You can see Duke and North Carolina. They've both been good. But they're not. You don't look at Duke and North Carolina and say, that's the best programs. I mean, they are one of the best historically, and they were one of the best with both of those guys. But it's not like Krzyzewski's won 5 titles. And, oh, by the way, he's won the last couple, and, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Alabama hadn't shown signs of slipping. If that starts to happen, and the reason is because Nick's not been able to adjust, or his health becomes a factor, maybe he's completely healthy at 70, and he's healthy at 71, but at age 72, something happens. So, he seems to be a very, very young. I know the guy pretty well, and we don't share medical information, but he knows me enough. I've had heart issues, and he's healthier than I am, and he's older than I am. So he's probably in really good shape, but there's going to be a point in time where that changes. That's going to change. Roy's had health issues. Mike had health issues 15 years ago, and so Nick has it. He had the hip replacements, and he's supposed to stay off his feet for 2 days, and he was walking out in the yard and doing crap. And so my point is there's going to be a point in time. I don't think it's now. I think when it starts to regress and it starts to see a problem, then I think you can look and say, you know what? May not be able to be there 5 years. I mean, I would say right now, because we're talking class of 23, that has to factor in to Eli Manning. Arch Manning, and whether he'd really consider. I think he'll consider Alabama, but I don't know that that's the type. As much as they respect, I don't know if they want. Archie did just a little thing. Archie did not want Peyton to be coached by Bill Parcells. He didn't really quietly like Bill Parcells. Remember, that's who was going to take him number 1 when he came out as a junior. He wasn't really excited about that. I don't know that, at least if they have what voices they have, probably wouldn't want that, because the quarterback is just. I think the Mannings, as quiet and as humble as they are, being the star is what they want. And so I don't know that Tua's a star, but Alabama, Nick Saban's a star. I think they're more of a star-driven, and I don't know that Alabama would be in it as much as people would think.
And I'll be honest, that's the one thing about Clemson that lends me some pause. It's the only thing. Everything about Clemson makes sense, except there's a part of me that wonders if, he wants to go someplace where it's his stamp, where they put that stamp. And even if it's a Manning, that program is kind of the Dabo program now. I don't know. It'd be interesting. We'll see. I agree with you about Alabama. I've never thought that really sounded right. I get the appeal of it. And he talks about almost getting nervous when he talks to Saban and stuff like that. And I get all that too. At the end of the day, if you told me he went to an SEC program not named Ole Miss, I think I'd pick Georgia. And I don't hear a lot of Georgia. I think if he doesn't, I don't know. We'll see. I've got eyes on Texas. I'll tell you that. I'm curious to see what Texas looks like. What Sarkisian, does it look like? That's a program that has momentum. We've heard this for years, man. Right? Texas is back. Here comes Texas, and then Texas isn't back, and Texas isn't going anywhere. Does Steve Sarkisian change that? I do know that Arch really likes Sarkisian. That's kind of a sexy program. Austin's a really cool place and all of that stuff. So we'll see. Here's the deal. The story has begun now. There's no stopping the car until it picks a destination between now and February, March or whatever. So one of those programs that I would have talked a lot more about 18 months ago was LSU. LSU had to fire an offensive line coach this week, Chris. Yep. I know they hired Brad Davis from Arkansas, Baton Rouge boy, got him to come home. What happened with the offensive line coach? I've heard it's recruiting related. Is this another thing to keep an eye on in Baton Rouge, or was this something that got handled immediately?
Yeah, no, it is. Look, it's as we always say, when a coach gets fired June 3rd, they're not hiring him because he was a subpar recruiter, which James was. Or a subpar offensive line coach, which he's not. He's actually pretty good. Because you made those decisions a long time ago. So, it's the dumbest thing in the world to do. And we talked about it with Lane. He was hedging, probably should have done it right after the season, would have been better off. Didn't. We explained why he didn't, and you don't wait this long. New stuff has come out. Or it's come out to the compliance office caught things that he was doing on recruiting. That the compliance office at LSU is there something sharper than pins and needles that they're on those things. They're not even they are like anything that's going on. They're because they're the ones that are going to get their neck chopped off, because that's the way it's going to go. And so that was that. Now the issue is he's got money left to be paid, and people will say, well, was he going to get paid his money or not? Well, he might be, because he might be able to show that I was just doing what everybody else is doing, and I got, what I mean? He might have evidence that he was just doing what he was told. In the end, this was the reason for the timing of the parting, because something's been uncovered that didn't happen like the last week, but they investigated it, and they just come to the conclusion it's something the compliance office caught. That's why he's been fired and brought somebody in. Now, so the whole thing about, they've got a good coach, good guy. I will say this, there was concerns about recruiting with James, and Ed's always how good, he's more inclined to replace a guy with a better recruiter. But again, you would have known that already. You didn't need to wait to this recruiting. This was something that might have been considered. But the fact that they had so much other staff turnover, let's remember, they had a lot of turnovers on that staff. They didn't want to add another one. And so now this is another one at the worst time. And so, they hired Brad. And again, Brad's a good coach. Doesn't know the players, didn't have a spring. All those things are in place. And to your point of, what is it? The 18 months ago, LSU was in better shape. Well, 18 months ago, they were coming off a national championship. Yeah. So, and things are looking good. And the only thing that's going to tie to LSU, I'm going to tell you now that just and I love them. If he said, Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, I love LSU. I want to go there. They wouldn't stop. They would grit their teeth to where they would probably grind off a couple of inches. They don't. That family, Cooper in particularly, does not like LSU at all. And I mean, none of them. I mean, they don't. It's the Ole Miss LSU thing. But it is. There's always obviously at that school where he grew up in Louisiana at high school. That's all LSU folks. And then Cooper does business, and Archie still has. There's business interest and LSU influence. So I think the play nice with LSU and all of that is really important to the family. And no one likes to protect their image more than the Mannings. So LSU, Ed, great, this, that, and the other. They don't. That's just not. If that's where Arch wanted to go, they just. And this is not a family that's worried about, man, go right down the road and see him play. They're on a plane, they're on a helicopter, they're on a train, they're on whatever they want to go, wherever it is. They can all afford it, including Cooper. With what he's just made off his brother's loan investment wise. So. The LSU situation is just in general taken back there, and maybe tied into that is there's a lot of unknown. I mean, if you were interested in LSU, if you're somebody like Arch, you've got to look at it. You got to have a strong tie there because you're right. This is a big year, and if he didn't need to say it publicly, but recently Scott Woodard made the same comment that he made. Remember when he got over to A&M? And he talked about Kevin Sumlin, and I don't know the exact numbers. 5-5 ain't good enough, or 6-5 ain't good, whatever. Not good enough. He made the same comment. He said, look, Ed's from here. Ed knows this place. He knows that the last year was unacceptable. I mean, that's it. So he knows that. Now, does that mean that if they have a bad year and they fall apart, is he gone? Probably. It is probably in the national media. You fired a guy that just was 2 years from national championship. The trend of the program is really important.
Sure.
Kind of like, and so that's going to dictate. And there's enough there, I think, behind the scenes on Ed that if he wins and he has success and it shows a lot positive, other people will take the fall for it. If he doesn't, then they'll go and they'll be able to say, on top of the fact that 2 years of regression, it's just as much about the direction, the lack of discipline, the turnover, and they're going to throw it on that. So that's where that's gone. Follow the season, I'll tell you where the heck that's gone, because it's not on the outside that people don't know what's going on behind the curtain. That 2 years ago, we'll give him a chance, he'll get it back to that. I think the smart football people realize that the 2 years ago was lightning in a bottle. I don't think last year was indicative. I think that was that you talk about the high ceiling and the floor. LSU saw it in 2 years. I don't think we're going to see them under Ed ever get back to 2 years ago. I don't think it's going to be as bad as it was last year. But if you ask me which one is more likely, it's more last year. That's more of what you're going to get with Ed is the roller coaster effect. It's going to be up and down and up and down. But the up and down is going to be from kind of in between, and it only gets tougher. So, I think it's going to be like, a 9-win team, 8-win teams, which over time is not going to be good enough. That's not going to be what they expect there.
That's why I was a little surprised Davis took the job. And when I say a little surprised, I mean a little surprised. I mean, he was with Pittman for a while, but there's home is powerful for people, and Baton Rouge is home. I think his parents are there. I think he has at least one, maybe two siblings there. So there's a family and all that was there too. But they are, and then money is powerful too. LSU's paying him handsomely to be the offensive line coach now. Sam Pittman's got to replace an offensive line coach. I think he's moving his tight ends coach to offensive line, and then he's going to use that spot to hire a recruiter. I'm not exactly sure what.
I think that's what he's going to do. And remember who Sam is. Now, Sam he's a head coach. He doesn't have time to coach the offensive line full time. But that's like Nick Saban in the secondary.
Yeah.
Sam that's one position, not this late, but that's one position that he's a plug and play, and he can fix that quicker than he could if he lost somebody on defense or Barry or somebody like that on defense.
Real quick, I'll tell you, we got one more thing I want to ask Chris about, but I do want two quick things. But I want to tell you quickly that we're brought to you by Blue Sky. They have 48 store locations across the Southeast. Get in touch with them if you're out traveling, and based on some of the things that I've seen, many of you are. Whether you're flying or driving or renting a car, whatever the case may be, when you see that Blue Sky sign, you know you are going to go into a place that has all of the freshest flavors, brand name products, best services, great people. It'll be super clean. They'll take great care of you. 48 store locations across the Southeast. Blue Sky. Also brought to you by Alpha Specialties. They're at 1670 Highway 80 in Pearl, Mississippi. It's your trailer-specific professional. If you want to haul it, they can call it at Alpha. They've got Load Trail. They've also got Hallmark cargo trailers. They can work with third parties to have game day trailers and concession trailers built for you. They've got spare tires and wheels starting at just $100, a full selection of trailer parts and accessories. They also do all types of truck accessories, and they have a full-service shop where they can repair all types of trailers. So get in touch with them at 601-932-9798 or check them out at alphaofms.com. Speaking of LSU, Eric Gilbert left LSU. He's at Georgia now. What kind of an impact do you think he'll have between the hedges?
All depends on this guy's head. And academically, I'm a little bit curious to see the transfer. What's transferring? Because my understanding, I don't know that there was. I don't even know if he finished his classes. I mean, I guess he's eligible. Let's throw that out there, because everybody asked me where he's gone, and I said junior college to get the grades up. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, he's at Georgia, so I'm gonna make assumption that got him in. He's eligible. Let's go there. The circle of influence is a problem with that family, and I'm wondering, Marietta kid, if closer to that family of influence is better or worse. I don't know. The kid's talented. The kid played well last year at LSU in an offense that was very poorly constructed and didn't have a quarterback until, Max Johnson came in and did a few things. That kid, he's almost 6'5", 250, and he can run. And they are planning to play him at receiver.
Yep.
Not tight end. And he's every bit. If you want to know what he can be, just look at Kyle Pitts last year at Florida. Maybe better. But does this kid have his head on straight? He's got the circle of influence going to mess him up? Is he going to work hard? You can have a lot of guys I've seen with talent that just doesn't. This guy not only can help them, he could be a big-time factor in the red zone. And formationally, oh my God, because you could play him at X and teach him one position, but put him tight to the formation, wide to the. There's a whole bunch of things you could create some mismatches. Up to the kid. And the kid showed up on the field last year for LSU. Caught 35 balls, played well. And again, he's going to have a much better situation. So, look, I'm not gonna hype the guy up. The kid is supremely talented, like top 10 pick in the NFL draft type talent. He may not do a thing for Georgia. I don't know. I don't know where his head is and how hard he'll work. That's the best I can go with you. But I can tell you, he is really, really talented. The corner, I think, can help him a lot as well. Probably even more important considering the need there. Georgia, we'll get into this a little bit more.
Yeah.
Georgia, I don't know that there's a loss in their schedule. I really don't. We'll get into that. I don't know that Clemson can hang with them as much as people think. We'll get into that later.
Yeah. Very last thing, real quick thought here. Houston Texans have voluntary OTAs. No surprise, Deshaun Watson isn't there. What it might be a little bit of a surprise is there's been a change of rhetoric this week. The Texans no longer talking about Watson. They're now referring to Tyrod Taylor as the starter. Taylor talking about being the starter. Appears that decision's been made. It doesn't appear Deshaun Watson's going to play in the NFL this year.
Doesn't appear, and that's the reason why. It's a PR move. It's a league move. That is under investigation. Don't know. I keep hearing things about when they're going to set the trial or the depositions and all. I think that puts him in limbo in the league. You also don't hear any trade talks about him either.
Right.
That's the spirit. Same reason. So, no. And if you're the Texans, you can't be talking about Deshaun Watson. Is he? Won't he? He just move on. Here's the quarterbacks we have are the quarterbacks we have. Deshaun Watson's not right now available to do anything with. And until the league says otherwise and they're going to follow the legal court system and do their own investigation, that's not going to change.
Great stuff, Chris, as always. A lot of fun. I hope everybody out there has a wonderful weekend. I think Chris is going to be with you on Tuesday. I'm going to be driving back from Fayetteville at some point Tuesday, so I will be back with you guys, hopefully, good Lord willing, a week from today. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Daniel, Sammy, Grind, Oklahoma Rebel. I know I missed people from earlier. Chet was in. A lot of people were in the chat, so thanks for being with us today. Have a great weekend. For Chris, I'm Neil. Talk to you next time on SEC Football and Beyond.